Hey, Tracy Lewis from Stuff and Things. I'm working on the color combo blog hop for February. The colors are Poppy Parade, Mossy Meadow, and Soft Seafoam. I'm also working on playing around with Lasting Lily. My husband is not impressed. You see all these depths. It's kind of like an X-ray. You can see inside the flower, and he is not fond of that. So I've been playing with various techniques to kind of make it pop more. And I thought I would go through my process. Everyone, when you finish them, each one is unique, and then I have a couple of them finished in slightly different ways. And we'll see how this one comes out, because this one is using slightly different colors than what I had been practicing with. So the first thing that I do is I use my Stamparatus so I can do multiple layers. I then actually was using markers so that I could clearly define the middle area, which I am going to do in a yellow. And I'm looking for Poppy Parade and Mossy Meadow. So it varies a little bit as well, depending, even though I bought all of my markers at the same time, they are at different stages of wetness. So I am seeing the stamen, if that is what it is called, and I am drawing around it because I want it to be yellow. So when I take this red and I carefully line around it, now that I've finished, I can use the ink spot if I want to. And again, I have not used this, so it might come out a little bit different than the other color I was doing my others with. I've just switched colors because of the color challenge. I'm probably going to go ahead and get the area around the stamen. I should have looked up what the formal floral name is. And then I still have been using the technique where I sponge off this extra ink. If I don't sponge off the extra ink, the little pixels, they get clogged. I guess that's the best way to describe what happens with when you over ink. So this particular stamp set with the distinctive lights and darks does better when you sponge off the excess. I'm actually sponging around this part as well. And I do have a paper towel that I have been using if I get any red where I don't want it. I've been wiping it off. So let's see what we have with our first big flower. I actually did the technique. This particular magnet is broke, and I used some washi. So see, I have a little bit of blotching, just a tiny bit, and that is from too much ink. I also see that there's a little bit of a smudge. I might actually, this is the color I used with the other color, and I'm going to try Daffodil Delight or So Saffron. Let's see. Let's try So Saffron. I just want it to lighten it up. This is actually a lighter red than what I had been doing. So working with this stamp is a lot, to me, it's a lot more of an artistic treatment than, I have to grab my So Saffron ink so I can get my sponge. So there's that. Now let's see what happens with it. Still want more color. This is way lighter than the crushed curry I had been using. So that is what that looks like. I need to move this to work on the second flower. Second flower is interesting because I have a hard time seeing where the stamen and then the wrap goes around. So I've been actually making more of the stamen show than I think really is supposed to show. This is a very wet marker compared to my other one. So I see very clearly the swoop there. And now I'm gonna switch to this sponge and pick up my extra ink. And I'm rotating this, by the way, as I go. This is my third completed one, and then I have another one that I was going to also show you the next step after the inking part. Last year there was a floral, I think it was in the part 2 that I got, and I never made it work. So I was determined to make this flower with the pixelized color depth. I was determined to play with this until it worked. So now this is interesting because I'm picking up lint from my paper towel from the last time I did this. I'm gonna switch and do a quick dab off of that extra ink. Let's just see if that's enough. That's okay. I'm okay. So that's what I'm going to start with, but I have a lot more steps I'm going to follow. But I will switch now to the Mossy Meadow. And a trick I have found with the stems here is you really need to make sure, most people when you look at their sample cards have some white and some people color it in. So I make sure that I'm way up overlapping. It is intended to overlap with the red. So there's that one. Depending on how I want this to crisscross, I might have to do that. I'll do that separate. Keep your magnets apart. Alright, so now on this one, I do not bother with the marker because I'm not trying to move around the yellow area. So I do, however, want to remove the excess or I'm going to get blotches. Again, I'm rotating as I go, trying to smooth it out, and I'm looking for smooth color. No lights and darks. I just want all one color of green. So that's the start, and it needs more. This is what I like about the Stamparatus, is that I can add my colors a layer at a time. All right, I'm good with that. So I'm going to remove this one. I've already envisioned the layers in my mind, and so this is the second layer, and then over the top there's this large leaf, and it's going to go over the top between the two. Rotating, trying to remove all the streaks, trying to make it smooth as possible. All right, I'm going to leave that as is and then put on the big leaf. Something like that. I could even have it go up higher if I wanted. So we have moved. We are way south in Arizona in the mountains, and it is pretty blustery today. It's been sideways rain and then sunny. Right now it's just a little bit of raindrops on our window. We're at 4,600 feet in actually a military town. There's a big Navy base. Navy? Army. I can't remember if it's Navy or Army. And it's called Sierra Vista. We are here because we are going through various parts of Arizona, all the higher elevation areas, looking for property. It's too hot for us in like Tucson and Phoenix, so we've been here in the higher elevations and really like it. Okay, so that is my base. Now the fun starts. So where my husband said he didn't, like at this point, he felt there wasn't enough separation between the various layers that you saw in the image here. The way I've done for this particular time, I went way down all the way to this outer fold. So I'm not going to do this upper fold that you see, and I'll show you how I'm going to do that. How I'm going to emphasize the various depths. All right. So at this point, I actually take the blends and I am going to do some, in this case, because I'm using the seafoam, which is a required color, it'll be implying that there's a green background. Now what I'm purposefully doing here is overlapping just the edge so that, see, the red is getting dark, and I am doing that on purpose to add more outline depth. If you personally didn't like this part of my technique, you could just make sure that you did your blends outside the lines. I have been using Balmy Blue because I was doing sky, so this is a little bit of a new experiment. Now, this technique, I am actually a certified Copic colorist. I have been to the classes, and what I'm doing here is adding a line on the outer edge of the color lifter, because I want the color of the lighter soft seafoam to fade away. I don't want the line to be really harsh, so the goal here is to do a little blending with the light, blending the light and the dark, and then have that the color lifter help fade the line. I just don't want a really harsh line. So hopefully you can see that that is a technique that I have learned in the classes, and everything is blending nicely. I kind of didn't go, and then I like my dark red line. I'm using the bullet to soften some of the lines, so I like that. That is the look I am going for. I need to be working in small increments here because I need my color lifter, which dries really fast. These are alcohol markers, so they dry fast, so you have to work in small increments. You'll know you've done too much if your line stops being soft. Alright, so the final piece is, now you could decide this is totally fine, and I think it would look great. I could see a oval, round, or square cut with a die cut and adding a layer, and I'm not going to bother with this bottom half because I'm definitely going to be cut it. But now I'm going to do my last layer. The last layer is a 0.3 marker. I mostly do my lines and highlights in white, but in this case I'm going to do it in black. So I'm doing the lines and the dots, and I'm actually following the lines that are already on here. If you have the stamp, these lines actually exist, and I'm just following them, enhancing them. Because I'm covering them, people might not know, whoever receives this as a card might not realize that it does have these lines. All right, so, oh, I've got to just do this last bottom part. That is my finished artwork. This is going to be for the color combo block. Hey, I'm back. I have crackled a soft seafoam. I have a tip, and I thought I'd better pop back in here. When you do the crackle background or any kind of background, do it on the full 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so then you can take your die cut and move it around on the cardstock until you have the area that you like the most. So that's my tip for that, and I am going to sponge this. So if my edges aren't getting dark enough, here's my tip. I just rub the edges right along the cardstock. need to add the aging. So that gives me nice dark crisp edges. If I want to add the lines to coordinate with the aged look, I just add them, and I'm not even using the whole stamp. So that is my instantly aged. I'm keeping my lines vertical, so that is one of the criteria for this. And then my paint splatters, I'm kind of putting up in the opposite corners of where my square is going to go. I've decided to use Friend. I used it in red. I also saved this piece. I pre-aged the red. This is Poppy Parade. I saved the eye, sometime, or the dot over the eye. Sometimes I don't. In this case, I'm going to try to keep a hold of it and add it. I will use mono glue to add it. I have a layer of Poppy Parade, very thin underneath, and I'm going to do all sorts of fun things with it. In this case, I am going to distress it first for sure. I use the snips. I just find it the easiest way to do the distressing, and it's one less extra tool to try to have in my toolbox since I don't have a lot of room. And if you want it rougher, I recommend you go forward first to get it started, and then you can go backward at an angle and really get some tears, little tears. I use a different technique if I want big tears. I am making a big fat mess, but that's okay. That's why I'm using this today. I'm making it all messy. Sometimes I try to keep it clean, but in this case I knew it was definitely going to get messy. I am definitely going to run this along the ink spot itself. I don't know how I would feel about the foam full-size pads. I probably wouldn't be inclined to rub this rough. It's got extra lint hanging off of it, and so I would definitely think twice before I would do this on a full-size ink pad. But you could always buy spots and have them for doing messy stuff like this, that you're not ruining a big investment. So I just have found this is the best way if you want a really dark edge, which that's what I'm looking for on the red, and you'll see why in a minute. And I'm not treating the paper careful at all. If it gets crinkled, wrinkled looking, I am totally okay with that. Alright, so now I'm going to run with my... Okay, so I've made a mess. Here's the joy of these. You can just... I'm saving my dot, so I'm going to be very careful with my dot. Put it over to the side with Friend. I have my paper pumpkin garbage container, and I'm just going to dump this really fast. That is when I use these, when I know I'm going to be messy. Okay, so here we have a need to get around the edges, and I want it pretty dirty and dark and aged. Again, you'll see why here shortly, because I'll show you what it's all going to look like. I've already aged a lot of the pieces. I thought I would show you a couple of tips here at the end. Alright, so there's my discolored Poppy Parade. It is going to be just a tiny bit showing. I have already distressed a very vanilla base that I'm going to trim up a little bit, and I see I'm going to have to add, I'm going to do more to it. I didn't know what these would look like. I have my already aged and matched layer for the top with the word Friend. Now the question I have for myself is if I want to add any copper, and I think I don't want to add copper. I'm going to work on aging the base, and then I'll be right back to show you what it looks like all finished. So, real quick, I used the largest stitched shape square. I used the second largest stitched rectangle. Here, this is the new stitched rectangles in the Occasions catalog. Love it. Totally feel you get a lot of value for your money on this set. So second largest rectangle for this, and the word friend from Well Written. But I decided to add the copper trim, which is a netted trim, and I hardly ever use it, so I thought it would be fun to use it this week. And I love how it gives the word friend a 3D look. Hey, I'm back, and I want to, sorry, my husband is moving, so my camera's moving. All right, I want to share one last step. Again, all of these are optional with whatever you like or don't. You can take and use whatever bits and pieces of these. So I'm not liking the softness when this is all together. So I am going to go ahead and do a layer of blends over the top. So bear with me. It's going to look very different when it is done. I am using Poppy Parade, the Flirty Flamingos, and I may go as far as the dark petal pink. I don't know if I'll need the light because I've already got this antiqued. So again, you have to be a little bit careful with your colors next to the colors. You want, if you don't want the colors to blend, you want the one color to dry before you add the next. In my case, I'm wanting a blend, so I need to apply my lighter color very quickly next to the darker one. So the secret, and this is all from back when I did the Copic coloring, to get your full lights and darks of the reds, you have to go into what I would call the salmon and pinks, all the way to the very light pink to get a full range of the reds. So that is why you see that I have the pinks and the peaches out. The other thing you can do if you want some shadows is add on top of the red, you could add some gray, some smoky slate perhaps. I wasn't really sure I wanted to go this route, but I figure what the heck, right? It is just paper, and if I don't really like it, I can always start over. As a rule, I love alcohol markers, love my Copics, and these blends are just awesome for me. They really tick a box that I didn't think that Stampin' Up! Had for me, that I felt was a little bit lacking, and I am so thrilled. Now, they had them a couple years ago, and I was doing Stampin' Up! At the time and was really, of course, sorely disappointed when they stopped selling them. So I'm so glad that they stepped back, took the time to really get a good alcohol marker made, because I love them. These are really easy to use. And I think you guys are going to like this. See how this is more salmony? The Flirty Flamingo actually is a perfect next lighter tone. liking this. This is a little peachier, so be careful with it. I'm actually not liking that as well on here. I thought I would because of the antiqued, aged look that I had given the paper with the ink. Now, one thing I want you to notice is how nicely this goes over the top of all of the color that I have already applied. Those were all done in a dye ink, and this is alcohol. There you go. So there's one flower done with the full vibrancy of blends, and it didn't hamper the look at all by having the, I'm gonna have to decide what color I want this little sun line. I think that's perfect. And then I grabbed I believe a dark mango melody for the inside here, which this is actually pretty dark already. There you go. Now I'm moving on to the second one and see how much better the Poppy Parade matches with the Poppy Parade cardstock. This is the vibrancy that I want, and what my husband wants. He's the one who says, I just don't think that there's enough color with those. It doesn't pop enough. Oh yeah, I'm liking this a lot. All right, so those give different options that I have videoed each step of the way. Gives you lots of options. And I hope that you will get to playing with this Lasting Lily. It is just a wonderful stamp set, and you can do so many different things with it. I love it. Thanks for watching.